Now we will look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of semantic differential scale. Before we move on to the advantages and disadvantages, we will first look at what we mean by semantic differential. Semantic differential is a type of rating scale designed to measure the connotative, which is the implied meaning of objects, events, and concepts. Semantic differential is used to measure opinion, values, attitudes of people, concepts through psychometrically controlled scale. Now, psychometrically is the study which is a part of psychology, and it deals with design, administration, and interpretation of the tests to measure opinion, values, and attitudes. The connotations are used to drive the attitudes toward the given object, event, and concepts. So, the connotations which are used in order to explain the attitudes towards given object and event. The semantic differential question scale offers bipolar pair of adjectives between which the respondent must choose. Now, typically a 5-point scale. So, I'll just discuss the type of bipolar pair of adjectives from which the respondent is required to choose. Now, this is the type of bipolar adjectives that are used in a test. Osborne's semantic differential basically deals with this measuring of opinion, attitudes, and values. Then it refers to making an attempt to measure the semantics or meaning of words, particularly adjectives, and their referent concepts. So one thing is the adjectives, and second is their referent concept. Referent concepts. The respondent is asked to choose where his or her position lies on a scale between two polar adjectives. For example, adequate, inadequate, adequate or inadequate. So this is basically two polar adjectives: valuable, worthless, good, evil, etc. Semantic differentials can be used to measure the opinions and attitudes. Now, Osworth's, so this is Osgood's semantic differential scale. He and his colleagues performed a factor analysis of large collection of semantic differential scales and found 3 recurring attitudes that people use to evaluate word and phrases. Evaluation, number 2 is potency. Potency deals with the strength and abilities. Evaluation is the assessment. And the third is the activity. Now, evaluation laws highest on the adjective pair good and bad. Good and bad. Potency strong and weak. And as far as the activity is concerned, adjective pair active passive defines the active passive. This basically defines the activity factor. Now, the semantic differential question scale offers bipolar of adjectives between which the respondent must choose along some of the scaling, typically 5 Likert scale or 5-point scale. The pair of words need not be opposite and may be used to discover fine differences viewpoint. Now, for example, please indicate your opinion about Jolly Boys TV show by checking one box in each below. So if you look at it, these are the adjectives, bipolar adjectives: very much, somewhat, neither, somewhat, very much. And this is basically typically a 5-point scale. Then alternative form using unmarked continuous scale with central position: enjoyable and boring, and etc. So that's how this is the semantic differential scale process. Now this is basically relatively unusual form of question that is used in more specialist survey where the connotative meaning is being explored. So the idea is to elicit connotative meaning. Purpose is to elicit connotative meaning. Pair of words are often opposites. This is not always the case, in which case there is more cognitive challenge. This style can be used to test interpretation of words or subconscious perception. It is also possible that people will ignore or select random response. Then the unmarked scales are more difficult to code afterwards, although this can be done with liquor type overlay. The advantage of this is that they are not dependent on the interpretation of words. For example, somewhat or somewhat can mean a lot or a little to different people. So respondents will tend to score these relatively. Thus, if they feel less strongly about a question than the previous one, they will mark the scale in more central position, since they are adjectives. The second is the means of the responses are then plotted as a profile of an image. So this is important. Then the responses are then plotted as a profile. The disadvantages include semantic differential suffers from lack of standardization. So standardization is the most important challenge this particular differential scale faces. Number of divisions of the scale, again, they are problems. So in order to standardize it, or in order to have a logical interpretation, the division of the scale creates problem. If two divisions are used, the scale is crude and lacks meaning. If too many are used, the scale goes beyond the ability of most people to discriminate. So if few divisions are used, then it lacks meaning because the information does not become substantial to infer or to interpret the responses. And if too many divisions are used, then the results can actually go beyond the ability of most people interpretation, and in order to create discrimination to come up with the results or valid results of the scale. To conclude, despite its disadvantages, the semantic differential is today one of the most widely used scales in the measurement of people's attitude, opinion, and values. One of the reasons is its versatility of the items. This is the most important point which has contributed in the widely used of differential scale of this particular kind.